And here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go again. Welcome to What's Good Under the Hood. Rob Sanders of Fox Sports Radio 1400. And to his right or left, whichever way it is.
Above me.
Is he? No, he's beside you.
No, he actually technically is above me. I'm looking up.
Owner,
because he's standing up.
Mazda of Columbia, Greg Hood. What's good under the hood, man?
Man, life is good.
Life is good and getting better.
Yeah.
That's my positive spin after last podcast. It's going to be great.
Better. Exactly. All right. So we have interesting stuff to talk about today. And, if you go back a couple of episodes, because unlike some folks, we don't charge you for an archive. You can go and check out every single edition.
There are people who charge for archives?
Yeah, to go back and listen to certain episodes of podcasts. Yes, they do.
If we could, we would, but we can't right now. Maybe one day.
Well, okay. Well, now
No, we won't.
No, we won't. Want people to go back and grab whatever. If you go back and you look at the Carvana episode, I believe, I can't remember the exact episode number. I wrote it
probably 10, 11 ago, maybe.
I think it was back in like February. Okay. But go back and check out that episode. And I'll tell you why, because Greg actually came out and said, I don't know how this Carvana thing is going to work. It's a mess, as I think the term that you
we were talking about titles,
right?
And that was one of the real problems they're having,
right?
But there's more stuff happening there.
There certainly is, and the big thing with this is that they're laying off a good bit of folks.
12% of their employees.
Yeah, 2,500. And executives will forego their salaries for the rest of the year.
Wow.
And this, of course, happened this past week. I mean,
what do you want to bet the word is bonus, not salary? They're paying them.
It says forego salaries in the headline.
Yeah, but you know what? Sometimes things are incorrect. National Enquirer.
Okay.
New York Times.
My air shift on 3 to 4 with Fox Sports Radio 1400.
The hour podcast right here.
But no,
I'm just taking a guess at that. I doubt if they're not paying them, but they could.
It says the online used vehicle retailer will transition operations away from a few of its logistics hubs and from its inspection and reconditioning center in Euclid. I hope that's how I pronounce that correctly. Ohio.
How's it spelled?
EUCLID.
I go with Euclid.
It's Euclid.
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 Well,
it's Euclid.
Where are you from? I'm from Euclid.
I channeled my inner Mississippi there, Andy, and blundered that.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, there's multiple reasons behind this. First of all,
sure.
May I? Okay. Please. They're bleeding like a stuck pig. That's the first thing. They lost 508 million this quarter or first quarter. Is that what it was? I think it was 508. That's a lot of money. I don't care how you slice it for any company.
What would cause them to lose all that money? They're selling cars. They sell them at the wrong price or what?
Well, I did a little research on that too. I'm Mr. Show Prep number 1 right now. I'm way ahead of you, Andy.
I know.
And one of the things I did is because they're publicly traded, you can go in and look at their there's PDFs that you can open up that show all their conversations they have with their shareholders, and you can see all the nuts and bolts of it. So they did an interesting thing. First of all, one of the things I was curious about, they sold 400 and something thousand cars last year, which is a lot. In one market, I think Atlanta, they have 3.5% of the market share, which is a big, big deal. But they only have 30 places that they do business out of. So one of the things they did 3 months ago, and it's just now been completed, is they bought Odessa Auctions. Auto auctions. There's Odessa's, I think, the second largest one. I could be wrong, but I think so. Mannheim is the biggest, but a lot of auctions are going to online. Like ACV is the one I use most. But I really, for the life of me, couldn't figure out why they would want that play other than having first dibs at a car. But it doesn't make it seem right on an auction basis. Matter of fact, I'd have a little concern if I was buying it at Odessa auction that, they're not getting the inside skinny on a car and the auctioneer cuts it off on them and they get the car. I mean, they can do a lot of crazy things. I saw envelopes years ago passing through hands between auctioneers and people that were selling cars. So, there's some crazy stuff in that. Online, that can't happen. It's a whole lot more controlled and you don't know anybody, like I said before, you're not bidding against the Coke machine. But I did learn something, and that is that the reason that they bought the auction had more to do with logistics and with reconditioning. So if they have a reconditioning center in Euclid, Ohio, they have to take all this inventory they buy, and then they have to bring it to this location. They have to truck it, and then they have to recondition it or get rid of the ones they don't want. Either way, I mean, because they don't keep everything, just like I don't. And then they have to redistribute the cars as people buy them, or to go put them in their machines that they've got. So that's a pretty expensive proposition, moving cars around. I mean, CarMax does it too. They move cars around a lot, but you have to pay a deposit to get them to go there. And other than that, I don't know how they balance their inventory. But what I did read, though, is by buying ADESA, they are within 50 miles of every of 58% of the population in the United States. So now if they send cars to these, and auctions are reconditioning centers, you've got a big piece of property out there. You've got mechanics and there's detailers, and also dealers can pay to have this stuff done. Well, now they've got this built-in resource for distribution and movement of their cars and reconditioning of the cars. And it is not, I mean, it's a whole lot more economically feasible if they're going to do it that way. So it made a lot of sense to me in why they paid $2.2 billion. And where the rub comes in is they paid $2.2 billion for a business. They're losing $500 million in a quarter, and they laid off 2,500 people. There's a disconnect for most people in that, as there was for me when I heard about it. But
that
then
math doesn't add up, but okay.
Okay. Well, I'll give you the math because I did write this down. This is important. In August, their stock price was $376. Tuesday was $40.
Holy hell.
So what's changed? Their business model's got problems. They need to shed their expenses enormously. So I also did another piece of research because, just out of curiosity, I wanted to do a comparison of how many cars AutoNation has and how many employees AutoNation has. So Carvana is a predominantly online business. Right now, they're moving cars, and they're reconditioning cars. But a car dealership in general, I would think, would be more labor intensive than, because if you have a facility and each one of them, and they have 30 places where AutoNation, and I didn't look at the number, but last time I looked, I think around 375, maybe more, but 375 car dealerships across the United States. Lithia is another one who may have just passed them. But my point is, they have about 26,000 employees, which means they have AutoNation, which means they have about the same amount that Carvana did, doing less volume than they did. So I think whatever their model is, I would have thought it would have been way better labor-wise, since most of it is online. So I think they overstaffed to do what they do. I don't think they were running real efficiently, if I have to guess. So shedding 2,500 bodies, and that is tragic as that is, that people are losing their jobs, they'll bleed into the automotive industry elsewhere if that's what they choose to do. I mean, especially if they're online marketing savvy or online savvy, there'll be some benefits for us out there in picking up those people. I won't see them around here, but just in general in the car business. But then I tripped over something that I had no idea of, and that was as I was looking for the statistics, I went to AutoNation and I pulled up their letter to their shareholders. And as I went through it, I did not realize they owned a pretty good chunk of Vroom, which is the competitor to Carvana. Now, they've sold off all of it now. They sold it in kind of two tranches, but they sold their interest in that company. But I had no idea that they were involved in a competitor to them, basically, and an online digital retailer. And maybe they did it just to learn something, and they profited from the sale too. But they may have learned how to actually do what they're doing and then go, okay, we don't need you anymore. I don't know. That's just speculation. I'm just guessing. But they were able to shed the rest of it and then move on. But they were definitely in that realm of digital retailing.
Well, it's interesting, though, because you said this is a mess, and now it's come to fruition. You are the Nostradamus of car dealers.
Yeah, remember what I said about GM last week?
Yeah, it was pretty much GM will be out of business in 10 years.
Well, I want to tell you, and I think it was a month. I'm going to have to go back, but I was watching something and it's made the statement that, GM is pushing this electric vehicle thing so hard. They think they're going to be Tesla and they're going to dominate the market. But last month, I think, and I could be incorrect on the month, but so don't come unglued on me. But last month, I believe they sold a total of 400 electric vehicles.
That's it? Nationwide?
Yeah.
That
So,
sucks.
well, what does that tell you? That tells you that they are they're making up a demand. They're going to have cars stacking up. They actually have inventory stacking up. Unfortunately, it's the wrong kind of inventory. So this Hummer thing hasn't gone the way they wanted to. It's a cool looking car. I mean, I like them, but that's not on fire. And then they're going to regulate how a Silverado is sold. I just think, that CEO, I can't remember her name, but she's just hell bent for leather on making this thing into an electric company. And when the core of her business is internal combustion, she's going to fail. And I think that probably the idea that, and this is not a sexist comment, I think the idea that she's a woman in charge, they're going to be reluctant to make a move there because it doesn't smell good. This woke crap going on. It just doesn't look well. If we replace a woman, I mean, she failed, so we can't do that. I mean, I got to tell you something. She's got to go.
Respectfully, though, numbers don't have a gender.
I'm in it.
And if you can see that,
ask Disney. Ask Disney.
Yeah, okay. But I just think that if you can look at it from a perspective of we were here, you made these changes, now we sold 400 EVs in a month. That's not working. I mean, I don't care if you have stripes on you, it's not going to work. You're going to kill the company. Somebody has to
well, the shareholders may at some point step in.
At some point, they got to do that.
You got to go. But I'm just telling you, I mean, maybe they're in lockstep with her. Maybe they go, oh yeah, this is the thing to do. But as you and I discussed earlier, and it's really relevant, the guy who's making it happen is Tesla. So with Tesla, with Musk doing his deal with Tesla, he made a product based and built and grew based upon demand. He may have kind of made the best looking product, but he's got something going in his favor. That is a status symbol to have a Tesla. Would you agree?
Yep. Absolutely.
It's also unaffordable for most people, but and I also stated to you that people that drive Teslas a lot of times are altruistic. Well, altruism does not play into a guy's life who makes $45,000 a year and has a wife and a child and is trying to pay his bills, and he can't pay 60 grand for an electric vehicle. Therefore, that creates a different demand. You give me that shoe example you use for Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah,
I knew half the story. I didn't know the whole story.
So Shaquille O'Neal had at one point a deal with Reebok where I can't remember the terms, but it was basically when he was
it was like $300 million. It was crazy money.
So, and he said he went to Reebok because some mom yelled at him from the stands and says, hey, why don't you guys make some shoes that young people can afford? And he goes, you know what? You're right. So he says, I called Reebok and I told him, I don't want to do this anymore. I'll wear your shoes through the end of the year. Here's your money back. I'm going to make my own shoe. And he said, I ended up going to Walmart, and they were the ones that were able to help me carry the Shaq brand of shoes. And he goes, yeah, we made a cheaper shoe, but in the end, he ended up going back because they were such a cheap shoe. And it was, hey, you're wearing the Shaq shoe from Walmart. And, with kids, it's like, I don't want to wear the Shaq shoe from Walmart.
It's a status symbol for a shoe.
Exactly.
Hell, it was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Listen, we had one kid on my basketball team who wore Converse All-Stars. Now, Converse All-Star now is a cool shoe, but it was a canvas shoe. Well, I had to have Adidas Superstars, or when I was wearing my regular shoes, we wanted the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. They were the ones that were the high top version of them. And they were $100 and something then. And, I'm begging my mom for a pair of these shoes, and we all wore really good shoes, and we were wearing, I had the Nike white leather Cortez. I mean, they were important then. And here we are only 7 years later. Because I shouldn't hit that. Sure. I just graduated high school. But anyway, they were a big deal then. So they're still a big deal now. So
yeah, but I mean, it's the way that it comes out is that kids didn't end up buying the shoe because you can go and get it at Walmart.
So who had the great idea at General Motors, and I'm going to throw Ford into the mix, I'll throw all the manufacturers in the mix, but particularly GM and Ford, who weren't even playing in that arena.
Right.
Toyota was with hybrid, and they'd been going.
Trying.
Yeah, well, they were successful. I mean, Prius is the other one.
Right.
But that was also a status symbol. That also sent a message.
But I don't think it was a status symbol because of what it looked like.
No, it was because of what you were doing, your contribution.
Yeah. Teslas look actually pretty good. I mean, that's a good looking car.
Yeah, listen, when I was doing my other business, I mean, I had dealings with Ed Begley Jr., great guy. And they drove a Prius, and then he built some kind of electric car that he had. I mean, that was the big deal back in the green movement early. That
you knew Ed Begley Jr.?
I still know him. I mean,
Do you really? Is he an odd guy?
Yes, but he's a very nice guy.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Now, it was cool. I got to hold his father's Oscar because I was in his house and I saw it sitting there. And it was actually, they were, I believe it was wood, but they aren't the fancy things they are now. It was kind of chipped up and all that stuff. But I had my Oscar accepted speech holding that in my hand. But super guy, just a great guy. But there's a guy who walked the walk. I mean, did he profit from it? Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah. Absolutely. But he lived it. He absolutely lived it. He was, doing all that. He had cisterns and he was growing food and everything you could think of to save energy. He had a really cool countertop in his house that was made out of recycled glass, and you could see the glass pieces in it, and it was very colorful. It was very pretty. So he was a cool guy. But what I'm saying about, so you got Toyota on this side, and the Leaf didn't make it. I mean, God, that was awful. Yeah. Nissan pulling that thing, but everybody's ripping toward this. What?
You wanted to say turd. You wanted to call it a turd.
I was going to call it something else, but we're trying to keep it a family show here.
A turd with wheels. That's my thing I often say. I mean, but that is, I just not understanding their market as far as what I can tell. I mean, my sister owned a Bolt. A Bolt?
Volt.
She owned a Volt, not a Bolt. Bolt is a little one. Volt is what she owned. And then
Andy
you have the Jolt and the.
Anyway. Andy's adult.
He's adult. That was the other one.
I've been accused of that.
So anyway, and she loved the car. It was a neat car. I get it, but that doesn't mean that you've got some crazy demand, and they're also not making them cheap enough. So, and it doesn't work in the Midwest if you're out in the middle of the boonies. They just don't have enough
charging stations.
And then here I mentioned in an earlier podcast, talking about the unintended consequences. And one of them is, the electricity. The electricity comes from somewhere. It's made from something, but we won't talk about the environmental side of that. What we'll talk about is now they're warning us. You're starting to hear it right now about brownouts and running out of electricity in multiple states, particularly California. Again, they're priming the pump. Well, so if I got an electric car and I can't charge it, I got another problem. So, it's careening towards something that isn't particularly good, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, the thing that gets me with all that is you can't fly anywhere in an electric plane. You can't haul goods in an electric truck.
But you know what? They're very close to that. Let me tell you this: with a truck, if they can figure out the battery situation, the torque of an electric motor by far exceeds anything that could be delivered by a diesel engine. And talking about, in California where I was, occasionally I would go from Northern California to Southern California, you'd drive over the Grapevine. When I was a little kid, we'd go over the Grapevine to visit my uncle who lived in Brea, but we'd go over the Grapevine and I see trucks in the slow lane where, the driver could have got out and walked next to it. They were in the lowest gear climbing that hill because they didn't have the power. Now you see them ripping up over the top of the mountain and they're doing 60, 70 miles an hour. That's pretty cool. But an electric vehicle, the power they have, a hill wouldn't slow them down. The torque curve is flat and it's big and it could be pretty interesting. And Tesla's coming out with one. There's a couple other people that are dabbling. Remember, we talked about there's one here in South Carolina being involved in development of big rigs. So
that's true.
I don't think that's all bad. And another cool. How much time do we have? We were doing all right.
Yeah, we got a couple minutes.
I got a conference call in 8 minutes, so feel free to go 30 because I don't want to be on the conference call anyway.
Sorry, folks, you're gonna have a longer podcast today due to the fact that Andy doesn't want to do the conference call. But I was talking about earlier about something I also saw that I didn't realize. when I lived in California, I'd been to the Salton Sea out in Imperial County, down in the bottom part of Southern California. And there's a lake, a lake out there that at one point, and you can drive around, it's really bizarre because you can see where there was marinas and there was restaurants and there was all this activity surrounding this big, huge lake. And I think, and this is just long-term memory, I think it is that it spilled off from the Colorado River and filled it up. And over the years, the lake has diminished in size. And in doing that, everything that supported it kind of, I think it's Brawley, California. Anyway, everything around it kind of collapsed. And so there aren't even people living there. It's a big body of water. But the real problem is with the body of water is it's also polluted. There's a lot of farmland down there. So the runoff from them and their chemicals and everything have ended up in that water. But it's also a terrific geothermal area. And so they've built a bunch of power plants down there to work off. And it's not typical geothermal. It's something really bizarre in how they do it. There's a moral to my story. I'm wrapping it up, I promise. And that is there's lithium in there.
For the batteries.
Yeah. And so Berkshire Hathaway is involved. They have energy plants down there. And now they're heading toward the development of extracting that lithium from that mud, because it really is just mud. And I believe it said they could supply 40% of our lithium demand annually. Very quickly.
Whoa.
So they're working toward that. It'll create jobs and all kinds of stuff down there. So we've got a lot of resources here in the United States that we can draw from. And that one has an upside because as they go through, they'll also do some cleanup and change the environmental program down there. But so we're not totally in the dark on all that stuff. It's the idea is we're going to produce the power in order to make to charge the batteries.
Well, that's a positive way to end the show because that's something positive that we could have from
Thank you,
some
Greg.
mud in
Just here to be
California.
positive. That's why I got up this morning.
That's right.
There it is.
Yeah.
Please like, subscribe, and share. And as in the last podcast, Greg Hood smartly said, leave comments.
Yeah, we want to hear from you.
It's What's Good Under the Hood. Greg Hood of Mazda of Columbia,
Make sure
Rob
you
Sanders.
put happy birthday in there because will this podcast
It's
air
going
in
to be
your birthday time?
afterwards.
Yeah.
So anyway, Andy's going to be 97.
Not
So,
bad for 97.
Not bad. You're looking good.
What's Good Under the Hood? Thanks for joining us today.